All right, I now call this regular meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Director Beck, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Mission statement. The Davenport Community School District is dedicated to growing excellence in academics, the arts, and athletics for every child by ensuring the highest quality education in an environment shaped by our diverse community, preparing our students to be lifelong learners and productive citizens. Vision statement. Education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Barnes, would you please read our guiding principles?
Guiding principles. Opportunity. We provide abundant opportunities to empower students to reach their full potential academically, creatively, and socially. Collaboration. We foster an environment that allows students, families, and community stakeholders to come together for the betterment of our students' education and future. Transparency. We share relevant and important information with our students, families, and the community to maintain open and productive communication.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Superintendent Schneckloff, would you please read the goals?
Goal number 4, foster the innovative use of finance, facilities, and staff.
Thank you. There are no recognitions tonight. We'll move on to presentations. The only presentation is long-range facilities planning, Smart and Sudlow. I'll turn it over to Superintendent.
Thank you very much. We wanted to give you, the school board, an update on our some recent renderings that we have for Smart Middle School, but also we kind of wanted to put a bow on the color conversation. We went back, took the feedback, also looked for basically any kind of anecdotal feedback that we have from the community, and that kind of matched what it looked like sitting at the board table. There's lots of history in our district. People also understand the notion of potentially being a feeder system. And so what I think what John's going to share with us today is a wonderful example. When we went out for our long-range facility plan in our community, one of the things they really wanted us to address was our middle school, and I feel very confident that our long-range plan does exactly that. But one of the things that was kind of a theme as it went through the planning phases was our middle schools need to be a place where our students transform into high school students. And so this notion that you're going to this idea that you're going to see tonight really goes towards that notion of our middle schools being places that they transform. So John, thank you for being here tonight. As always, got an exciting presentation for us, so thanks for being here.
So I got a lot of information. I'm going to start with just a kind of an update as to where we're at with SMART, because you've seen kind of the exciting images of where Sudlow has progressed to, and SMART has gotten to a really good point where I think it's something the district could be proud of, and we'd like to start sharing that with people beyond the walls of the district, just to kind of boast some of the great things happening. So one note, just from our presentations moving forward, I'm not going to put floor plans in. The SMART floor plan hasn't really changed significantly since the last time we talked, but when we do have changes, I'll distribute those via paper. That way we can avoid putting those out electronically. So as TJ noted, middle schools were a high priority for the district as we look to solving some issues with the master plan, and with SMART specifically, the building has been sort of built out in a way that was not really conducive to fulfilling the full education vision for the district. And so we wanted to do an improvement there, but as we've discussed in the past, one of the big things is creating a house model in the building. And so that design solution really did kind of nail down The house approach, as you remember, the house approach in Smart looks very similar to how it does in Sudlow, 2 houses per grade level. And then accounting for the new spaces we need for STEM, CTE, FCE, the right size classrooms that are organized in a way that kind of recognizes how students want to learn in the space, how the curriculum will be delivered. And a big one for SMART was improving site safety, site logistics, changing the relationship of how outdoor space works with the building. So SMART being the big catchment on the west side of town, there's a lot of students that attend SMART that come from quite a distance. There's a 2-mile walk radius to get to the building. We have a lot of kids that get either bused or driven there. It sits in a unique area just up the hill. We have the kind of the really high modern Figge Art Museum, the Putnam Art Museum. So that Putnam has a really nice look to it. And then as you move down the hill, there's history. We have a lot of old buildings and rich in heritage of the culture of Davenport. So it was kind of important to recognize that as we started thinking about the design aesthetic. One of the big things that we recognized early on, though, is if we were going to keep that gymnasium that's up in the yellow box in the center and demolish a good portion of the existing school, then the size of this addition was going to creep out enough that you can see it overlaps 5th Street. We know that by demolishing Monroe, it makes way for creating space that we need for parking, playground, practice field, PE space, but we are really pinched by 5th Street. And so as a result, we kind of did a plea to the city that says we would like to request a vacation of 5th Street. Vacation means they vacate and the school district would take ownership. We could solve the problem by putting a very sizable addition on the north side of 5th Street, but I don't think it would work well. It'd be more than 3 stories tall, and it would probably build out to the very extent of the property line, and it probably wouldn't work as well as what the plan has arisen at. But the other big thing is all of the outdoor activity space would be across the street. And so we would have students moving back and forth across the street all day long. So the safety and security are not quite where we wanted. And I think I got out of order here. So where we have landed is a building which does make use of the property. If we were to connect Monroe and Washington, or Monroe and Smart's properties to become one single property that also includes 5th Street. We have our existing gymnasium, and then we stretch our new addition across the west side of the property, but we leave nice space as a buffer around the edges of the building. To the front of the building, front being west, we provide our hardscape, some hard paving, basketball courts. Kids can use it at like a recess time or a PE time, or grass practice field surrounded by a walking track, a feature that we also have at Sudlow. There would be a front drive that would be a drive drop-off lane that could shut down after the start of school, open back up after dismissal time, but that would allow ease of access for students to move between the building and those outdoor spaces. It also has a lot of eyes on it because it's the front of the building where we have staff easily moving out there with them, observing through windows. So it's a better situation. To the north side, off of 6th Street, just a small bus loop. So the drive lane and the bus loop form a little plaza where students can safely exit a bus, safely exit a car, and move their way towards the front door of the building. At the bottom of the plan where Monroe once sat, create some additional parking as well as some additional drive lanes for drop-off sequence. This allows multiple opportunities for cars to get their kids picked up at the end of the day, dropped off at the beginning of the day, whether at the south end of the property or at the front door. It's meant to help improve the logistics and flow of traffic around this block. With that, there are 2 parking lots to the north side of 6 that would remain. Those really become beneficial in an event situation because that events situation is going to occur at the north end of the building. The way the building lays out, there would be a main primary entrance to the building to the very middle of the building. Just above that, alongside the existing gym, we'd have an events entry. And the plan does lay out that we can separate those 2 functions from each other. So if you have a basketball game, volleyball game, wrestling, we can shut down the academic portion of the building so people don't wander through. If there's a parent event, conferences, a parent meeting in the media center, we can shut down the activities side and keep people just in the education areas that we want. There's also safeguards in here that allow multiple levels of security to the access as you move between the primary public spaces of the building down to the academic houses. So there's levels of security that help make that space feel safer. When you move inside the front door, one of the really cool things is you get right inside. There's an entry that's underneath our library, and there's a primary stairway, kind of a vaulted 2-story space that connects through to the space upstairs, the library. It also has observation views into the cafeteria spaces of the building. And Mr. Driscoll's really excited because he has a plan to showcase some art and some things of pride in the building right here at the front door when you walk in. When we look at our academic house, our neighborhoods are really taking shape. There's kind of a common collaborative space. It's a circulatory space, so circulation, people walk through it, but it's also a flexible use space in the center that's bounded by the classrooms. So the core curricula classrooms are around the outside of the house. There's a door that you access into the house. Once you're in there, those core curricula, your bathrooms, and your collab space are all kind of located together. The lockers are just outside the entry to that collaborative zone, and so that forms one academic house. If you mirror it, then you get the second academic house. There's 2 per floor, and then we replicate that across 3 floors. So that has taken shape nicely. The staff has really worked from a developmental standpoint to understand what that space is, how they're going to use it, how is it best to set up the classrooms and use those classrooms. And so we feel that that building is really making some good headway on its design. If we jump into a classroom, we are starting to have those conversations of what does a typical classroom look like, meaning how do you arrange desks and chairs? Is it desks? Is it tables? How much cabinetry do we need for storage? Where's our teaching wall? Where are windows and how are students arranged? Where's our teacher's desk? So that's starting to come together. And then science classrooms, whole different setup is required there. So having those conversations about what that is. And so you can see with the kind of the 3-dimensional plan, those spaces are really coming to life for this building. But the real exciting part is we have a vision of what it looks like. And so if you stand along the west side of the property and look back at the building, it was important to recognize that that historical piece was brick, so masonry. Kind of that brick has some substance. It kind of speaks to the historic nature of this part of town. At the same point, there's some contemporary buildings not far away, so we wanted to kind of draw from both those. But what you see on the very left side of the building is that existing gymnasium that remains. Stretching across the middle is the kind of the PE spaces, the academic support spaces. Our main office is on the first floor, our media center and other curricular activities on the second floor behind that. And then on the right side is our 3-story academic wing. So we have our academic houses on that side, and it's done in an aesthetic that anchors it, bookends it against that existing gym. One of the things that you notice, though, is we really take pride with that, the smart eagles and that yellow and black, the golden black color scheme. And this says Smart Middle School, but we've had conversation. Mr. Potts pointed out that it should be FL Smart, or Frank Smart. So we will be modifying that so that it's named appropriately. But what's really neat is we are bringing that color and that identity to what is the Smart Eagles, to the aesthetic of the building. It's really fun. That library stretches out, frames that main entry, so it provides a real visual focal point, which helps the wayfinding for anybody coming to that building. When you look to the right side, that's our main offices and academic support spaces. To the left, we have some PE and fitness spaces. Again, right above, that's our main library. Over top, if we kind of take a glance to the left, there's a separate entrance that is our activities entrance. That comes in right alongside the existing gym. There's also an entrance that approaches from the north, so the opposite side of this gym. But putting a little bit extra rework to the gym just to make sure it ties to the aesthetic of the new piece. And then again, just hearkening back to that Eagles branding that's a part of this building. If we stood at our main entry and glanced to the right, we look towards that 3-story academic wing. What you're seeing is one side, so one house side of that wing. 3 floors, so the lower floor would be 8th grade, the second floor would be 7th, and the top floor would be 6th. If we looked from the south, this would be your view from 4th Street. So this is a really whole different kind of view for the person that's passing by on 4th. They're going to see something that's really invigorating and exciting. It's got the masonry that pulls the aesthetic from that existing gym. It's got some of that gold color that speaks to the Smart Eagles, but it's a really refreshed, exciting presence that should really speak nicely to the community from that view to the south of the building. So that is a really fast run through of what your FL Smart Middle School is starting to shape up as.
Hold on. Director Beck.
Thank you for the presentation. I have 3 questions. The first one is, are the science teachers, I assume the science teachers are helping design the labs, is that correct?
Correct. So we do what we call user group sessions.
Okay.
The building principal, Mr. Driscoll, and then teachers from the building actually sit in those sessions. We do several at a time when we do them, but it's like a mini charrette. And we show designs, we talk through designs, and we refine the space when we do that.
Okay.
And that's for all the different aspects of the building.
Okay, so I'm just asking because I know we're renovating a building, and one of the important things that we had to consider was like sink size, and only us as scientists knew, or as the science teachers knew what we needed. So I just want to make sure that
One
kind of thing.
One of the initial conversations really was understanding the difference between middle school science and high school science, because it is different. So the requirements they look like a slightly lesser version than a high school lab.
Okay. The second one is, I don't see any playground area on the drawings, and there's not really a city park, in the vicinity. And so by removing Monroe, we've kind of removed a common public play area.
So there is a park, I think it's 2 blocks down the street, called Monroe Park.
Okay.
So-
It doesn't show up on the maps when I look for it.
Yeah, it's called Monroe Park. It's right by where the old Harris Pizza used to be.
Okay, I'll look again.
Yep.
And then my other question was, so This is basically almost an entirely new school. It does seem like a lot of parking for a middle school. I don't know what the requirements are these days, but I do like the idea of having the drop off that sort of mirrors Locust, and then the one to the front of the building, and then the separate bus lane. I guess my question would be, how are we going to build a new building when the students have to be in the old building?
So the sequence works that the old building is not infringed upon by the
Okay.
new addition. So the new addition stretches out across the property. That can get fully constructed before you tear down the old.
Okay,
There will be disruptions,
obviously, yeah.
but the goal is that the very first thing that would happen is the street would vacate. We would re-tie in the sewer to the existing building so that there's no disruptions to the service there, construct the new addition, then tear down the old, then come back and finish the patchwork that's needed where we've kind of removed that.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Kleindro.
On slide number 6, could you explain the red lines on the boundary? 6. There you go.
I think those are public transportation routes, but I'm not.
Okay, I
sure.
didn't know where they fit into the boundaries. On how is the city receptive about the Fifth Street?
So there is a process that we have to go through to vacate that. We started that process last week, and another key component is to host a neighborhood meeting, and Sarah already has those scheduled with the aldermen and women in this area.
Okay. And my last question is, when you're on 4th Street, is there going to be some identification that this is Frank L. Smart Middle School? Because I know with Sudlow, we made sure that it identified it from Locust Street, even though that wasn't the main entrance.
Yeah, we'll actually do the same. We'll look at the electronic message board and sign down at 4th Street, because that is the kind of the main identifier for that
Right,
campus.
right. And it's Frank L. Smart. Having taught there, that is a big deal.
Director Barnes.
John, I have a couple questions about the collaboration space and natural light. I'm assuming you probably don't want glass walls, and probably both for expense and safety. But is there a possibility that you could look at the top quarter of the wall to get natural light in from the exterior into that space? That could very easily become a dark space when teachers put things over windows, etc., and that could just become a hangout space rather than a collaboration space. So would the plan, is it possible to look at that?
Yes, so the south end of that collab space does have exterior light. And then we have been batting around how we deal with the classroom entrances that has had an exploration that discuss what you would call transom lights, so high up lights to help some natural light penetrate into that space. So that's still being worked on, but yeah, that has been a regular conversation.
Miss Wynn, do you have any questions? Anyone else? I do want to notate for the record, I forgot to do this at the beginning of the meeting, but Directors Potts and Hayes are not present.
All right, this one's really talky at first, so I apologize. And yes, I'm talky anyway. And I did note it as FL Smart on this slide, so I got it. Okay, so we've had a lot of discussions about identity and environmental branding. And this came up with respect to Sudlow and SMART and this idea that they are now part of a regional pathway that takes them from a series of elementaries to this middle school and then on to their high school. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about what is identity and how you handle it from an environmental graphic design standpoint. One thing that I'm going to do is kind of walk you through a concept, and it's based off of a case study. And the case study is pertinent for two reasons. One, it's a building that a bunch of staff went and toured. They toured it because it was a new middle school construction of similar scale and nature. And so it was a really beneficial trip for staff to go see that, to see how some of these spaces come together in a new environment. The other thing is it was a unique branding opportunity, which I'll explain. And what that did is that sort of put our team at an idea that's kind of a interesting way to resolve the environment for our SMART and Sudlow projects. So identity design is who you are and what you want to say about yourself. So it's the kind of the core belief of who you are as a student of a building, as a student within a district, and even your statement of who your building is and who your district is. Environmental branding is the way you display that or signify that throughout your design concept. So that is color, that is graphics, wording, lettering, but that informs the design concept, and the design concept also informs the branding by making use of how it applies the identity in your solution. And so it really does come down to being fed by understanding what's the logo, what's the name, what's the mascot, what's the typeface and the brand colors that's used for that. Why is it important, and what is it that you're trying to say, and how does it, respond from a feeling standpoint? What does it make you think or feel when you think about that identity for that brand? And so environmental graphic design is how you apply that idea of branding and identity throughout your space. And it really is. It's the integration of logos, letters, colors, typeface. It's not just painting something on a wall like word art, but making it intentional so that it responds to what you know about yourself as an identity. So there's a whole exercise that you go through to really dig into what that brand is for any school or any district. The colors are another important piece of that. They're usually fed by the logo or the mascot that sort of creates a name for the school. However, when we look at multiple schools, it gets challenging. In the case of the Vel Phillips Middle School, this is a brand new school, brand new logo, brand new identity. It is born from two different buildings. And so Vel Phillips was the combination of two school districts. But what you could see is, like that very first graphic I showed, the identity is the Vel Phillips Phoenix. The environmental branding is what resulted from the integration of the identity and the design concept to fulfill how the brand is displayed throughout the building. Vel Phillips was a combination of two other middle schools that closed, Webster Stanley and Merrill, and they had different colors. So Webster Stanley was a series of golden colors. Merrill was some blue colors with white. Actually, white was kind of present between both. So it became important to honor the tradition of both by pulling some cues from the blue and the yellow that existed in both. That then led to a study of who is this group, and it became really important, this idea of unity, we're bringing two different people together and we're going to try to unify as one. So unity, and you can see even in the word, it became important to pull that color theme together. So you see the golds and the blues of the two different entities kind of merging in that brand. From an exterior, There was an old historic middle school, and the other one was more contemporized. So it became this idea of merging the identities of something that's got some older construction types as well as something that's newer, and that it was the materials, the types of installation of the way they were used, and that came together to inform what the new middle school would look like. But from an inside standpoint, it started to set up this idea that when you're in the building, aesthetically, there would be a tone of different colors employed throughout the building that relate back to the original brands, the Webster and the Merrill. The Webster Stanley being the gold and the Merrill being the blues. That becomes part of the paint and the floor and the logos and the brand throughout this building. In terms of unity, it became really interesting to study how does unity take place from an aesthetic standpoint. So the team explored different concepts that sort of signify togetherness or unity. So they looked at weaving, nesting, aligning, interlocking, different ways of bringing color together and texture together to help bring these two different things together. What ended up getting selected was this concept of weaving. So it was weaving two different colors together in a way that they felt like they worked well together. They were complementary, but they produced something new and different that was wholly their own in this concept. So they used a weaving pattern that brought the colors in, and you can see how that started to come together in different ways, but it always had present those blues and golden colors of the original two brands. And then that gets placed throughout the building. In this particular one, there were community icons, so it was important for this building to pay some homage to the different pieces of the different communities that both buildings came from. So everywhere where there's a graphic, it relates back to the broader community, and it brings together this weaving effect of the golden blue colors. And then they put that throughout the building with the Phoenix logo, with some different tonal patterns. Those tones, when you see the more bright or the more muted, or there's more blue versus more yellow, that's how they distinguished their houses. And their community icons help them create some identities to the different spaces in the building. So it's kind of a really neat case study to show the group. When we started talking about Sudlow, we started talking, actually we did this at Sudlow and SMART, the concepts. After this presentation got together, I got the presentation information for SMART, so it's going to become very similar. But we talked about, from an identity standpoint, this idea of separate together. Separate meaning we have all these different grades on different floors in their different houses. So you have separate houses inside of separate grades on different floors, but together they're all one in the building. So together they are Sudlow Tigers. Together they are the FL Smart Eagles. Separately, they're 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders. They're in two different houses. So we want to start thinking about who they are and how they exist. So what we started to look at, and this was very specific to Sudlow, was those students, when they're in the building, in the common spaces, when they're coming to the building, when they're on the campus, they are Sudlow Tigers. They have that identity. There's a pride and a heritage of Sudlow that exists in Eastern Davenport. And so we want to make sure that we're very respective of the Sudlow Tigers and the orange color that goes with that, maybe even some of the black and white that goes with that. In general, Sudlow is the school that feeds Central. And so as these students move through their educational experience at Sudlow, their next step is to move on to become Central Blue Devils. What we took from that is not that we're going to push the idea of Blue Devils or blue or red, But we did understand that blue is a really nice complementary color with the orange of the Tigers. And we can start to merge this together in an aesthetic that makes sense. And so the concept that we started to come up with was, and this is just a quick plan partie, but if you took the different floor levels of the building, when you're in the common spaces, the gym, the library, the cafeteria, the even some of the support spaces, the library, your Sudlow Tigers, you enjoy these spaces together. That's your identity as a group. In the academic houses, we wanted to start to speak to the idea that these students are transitioning. So at sixth grade, they're going to come into this building and they're going to be presented with this idea that they're now middle schoolers. They're Sudlow Tigers. So we want to be strong with the presence of those tiger colors. We want to start to blend or merge that color palette as we move from sixth to seventh and then seventh to eighth in a subtle way. It's not to push towards them anything specific, but to start to begin this familiarization with that Blue Devil blue and start to think about the fact that these students are now at eighth grade preparing for that next step of moving towards high school. And so this is a really simplified, oversimplified concept because there's a whole lot of work that goes into how we employ this. But the idea is that at SMART, we would be Smart Eagles moving towards West High School. And so that idea would be a merge of colors. Yellow and red probably don't work as well, but the black and red do. Smart Eagles have black and red. Maybe there's some yellow that finds its way in there. But again, at FL Smart, when we're in our spaces where we're all together, we're the Golden Eagles. As we move through our academic houses, we're moving from this spot where we start as a Smart Eagle and start to interject that idea that we're preparing for the next step, which is the West Falcons. And so that's kind of where this design exists right now. And we feel that it's a really strong color palette. We think it's a really strong, significant step towards understanding the identity of who these students are as they come into the building and where they're going when they leave.
Director Beck.
I like that idea. I mean, there's always the idea that the colors around you can influence you in subtle ways. I kind of like this merging, and it's not like in your face. It's just there. And it just occurred to me that maybe the process at FL Smart might be more of they're one kind of bird and then they become another kind of bird.
We've had a lot of conversations about how Smart and West are so much easier because they're both birds.
Thank you, John. Knocked it out.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Student board reports. I guess we'll start with you and we'll end with you.
All right. Or I'm going to try also to speak as much as the other schools as possible too, so bear with me. But this month has been definitely eventful for our athletic programs. For instance, tonight West is having their girls tennis is going against Comanche, hopefully getting their 4th win for their 3v1. And so is boys soccer is currently playing Northcott at West. So definitely a lot of good games coming up for all schools, but especially West. So I would definitely come out. And not only has our athletic programs been really eventful, but so have our arts. This past month or so, the weekend of the 13th, I believe, West hosted the Iowa High School Music Association Solo Ensemble and Festival. This year, a total of 12 schools, which is a record for West, performed within our campus. West would also like to congratulate all the students who participated from our school as well as Central and North. And congrats to Central for having amazing students win Best in the Center. West Band program is also hosting color guard clinics, promoting more of that unity between between our feeder schools. So we're opening up auditions to 9th graders for not only music but also our softball, which is coming up this Friday. And then furthermore, our musical this weekend, Cinderella, saw a really great turnout of friends and family, but also a great turnout for the event of a tea party for the girls who wanted to dress up as their favorite princess. And also congrats to Central for an amazing musical production of Mamma Mia. It was really a great turnout too. And then finally, within our own campus, West will be piloting a Tier 2 check-in, check-out program. This means we'll be seeing more of a positive intervention between adults and students at the beginning of the day to see more of a positive behavior throughout the day to promote more productiveness and unity. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to board reports. Director Klein Jerome.
I did attend Cinderella, and there were a lot of little princesses that were running around in their dresses and very happy about the tea and all. And I also did go to Mamma Mia, and again, it was an awesome show. We have a lot of talented students, so I have seen all three high schools musicals, and they were all really, really good.
Thank you. Any other board reports? Director Poston.
I also attended Central Musical, and again, it was a great production and just so much talent. And also, since the last meeting, I was able to visit Hayes Elementary. I want to thank Principal Goddard and the staff for allowing me to get into their classrooms.
Thank you, Director Poston. Director Beck.
I was just going to say, Mamma Mia was very good, and I've had ABBA stuck in my head for like 3 days now. It was that good.
Thank you. Likewise, I was able to attend both Cinderella and Mamma Mia, and I will echo what Director Klein Jerome said. We have some amazing, talented kiddos in our district. Phenomenal. All right, with that, we will move on to open forum. I don't have to read the long spiel. All right. There were no virtual or open forum requests, nor any in person. So we will move on to consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, Director Hayes is online. Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Superintendent report.
None at this time.
Committee reports. Do you got anything for breaking barriers?
The individual groups are beginning to meet. I think there's one scheduled. They have met, so the individual groups are meeting and in preparation for our next meeting.
All right, thank you. LZAC.
We meet in May. That's right. Thank you. May.
All right, nothing new for long-range facility, as you all just saw the presentation we saw. Policy committee.
Our next meeting is scheduled the first week in May.
Thank you. Nothing new to report on legislative advocacy other than they're finally out of session. Finance committee.
We met last Thursday, and Kevin will be reporting on the key measures and monthly fund report.
Take it away, Kevin.
All right, we'll start, Brenda, with the monthly report. This will be brief. We're 3/4 of the way through the year on this report. Much of this is repetitive, but probably the most important one is you see the salaries are starting to show us a larger spread than the prior year. If we remember, we used ESSER funds for retention bonus this current year. This includes the second payment that we made to staff. So there's a large jump in that FY24 payment. That was done the 1st of April for people, but it was a March expense. Still positive at the end of the year. And then on page 2 of that, the one thing I wanted to mention is This will be the last time you'll see that negative number in other Fund 30. That is our capital project funds. On April 11th, we received our first installment of our bonds. So you're going to see that number change completely around next month. So it's timing. That's all I have to report for March. On the key measures report, you'll see that our UAB is pretty steady at that, projected at 15.5%, which is not a bad place to be. It's not jumping around as much as it has in the last couple months. It's pretty well stabilized. And as far as our unspent budget, you'll see that our leveling isn't quite as level as we'd like it to be at the 93.3, but that number is also a consistent number. We had budgeted for nearly 100% of our budget. We just have not gotten there this year. And as far as the solvency percentage, we talked about that 2 weeks ago when I was showing you the budget. This will also correct itself going into next year with our cash reserve not being there next year. On page 2 of that, the only thing I want to mention is as of this afternoon, I just completed a amendment to our budget, and we'll be talking about that. There's 3 red areas there. We'll be talking about that on March 13th, and we'll be asking for action on March 28th, or excuse me, May 13th and May 28th. So we'll have that coming up in next month.
Any questions? Thank you, Kevin. We will move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 10.01?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the 2025 budget as written. I don't know. Doesn't have anything there.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? You're on the second item.
I'm on the second tab, and it's,
Okay,
Yes.
I apologize.
Can you guys?
I do believe you're right, Karen. If you would open the memo,
Oh, that's what you wanted to read?
what's that?
Is that what you should have read for the motion?
Yes. So why don't you withdraw your motion?
I'd like to withdraw my motion to approve the budget.
And then Karen, you're correct. There's a recommended action. I have it showing right now. If one of you would read
Okay.
that. I apologize.
I would like to move the board adopt and certify the budget and tax levy rate for the 2024-25 fiscal year as published and presented. The proposed property tax levy rate per $1,000 taxable valuation will be 13.70897, and resources and requirements are estimated at $556,744,869.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. This will be a roll call vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Barnes,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.02?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
resolved that the Board of Directors of Davenport Community School District will levy property taxes for fiscal year 2024-2025 for the regular program budget adjustment as allowed under Section 257.14 Code of Iowa.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, again, this will be a roll call vote. Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Barnes,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.03?
Mr. President,
Director Poston,
move the board approve the purchase Eisenhower Elementary classroom furniture from Workspace for $421,499.07.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.04?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the Madison Elementary classroom furniture from Workspace for $518,626.54.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
Why is Madison's furniture so much more expensive than Eisenhower?
It has a lot to do with the number of seats in the building. So just number of kids, number of seats, classrooms, what are the needs? Each room or each building was looked into to make sure what the needs were too. So I mean, there could be a few things here and there that are a little bit different, but generally speaking, it's the number of students.
Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. We'll move on to discussion items. The first subject for discussion is 11.01, replace Eisenhower rooftop units. I'll turn it over to Superintendent.
So Eisenhower has 4 rooftop units that we continually have issues with them failing. Creates hot space and humid conditions in the library area actually in this building. So obviously with all the books and material in there, it's key to have a good, well ventilated area for these students and material. So this is a proposal to replace those 4 units at Eisenhower for approximately $600,000. The proposal's from Train, and it would be through the Omnia state bidding contract is where we got the pricing from.
Thank you. Is there Director Poston?
I know you've explained this before, but would you explain it again as far as going through the state and comparing that to taking bids?
Well, so we could post this stuff on Ion Wave, which is a bidding website that we have inter-district, and we could take bids and compare them to each other ourselves. The state also does a bid similarly with similar vendors to what we typically use, and in this case, the bids come back from the state and they say who their best pricing was. In a lot of cases, like this, for instance, this is Train. We use a lot of Train in the district, so it helps to keep staff familiar with the same units. It's like buying similar trucks and cars. If you're used to using that on a piece of equipment, you get used to working on it. So in this case, we like to utilize Train.
But how do you know that this is the lowest possible cost for that project then?
I mean, I have to go by the fact that they had to bid it out through the state website beforehand.
Okay.
Director Beck.
2 things. The first one's a follow-up to that. So I guess back it up a little bit more and explain how the state website bidding system works for people who might not be familiar, if that's possible.
Kevin, you probably know it better than I do.
Yes. The state has rolling contracts with vendors of all types. It's not just construction, or it's not construction, replacements such as these. We try and use already bid pricing when the state of Iowa recognizes them. reduces so much time from start to finish of a project. We're talking months. It also reduces our staff time, so it makes us more efficient. We've always tried to be much more efficient with our time for this. If there was a item that we thought was more of a commodity that fluctuates in prices, we may go out and ask for bids for an item that is already bid, but usually the prices that the state of Iowa has or other contracts that aren't done by the state of Iowa, but the state of Iowa recognizes, we often follow that because it is a true bid format at that time.
Okay. And then my other question was, so they're going to be up on the roof, fixing these rooftop units. When was the last time the Eisenhower roof was replaced? And if it's close to the end of its life and people are going to be up there anyway?
I might be able to pull that information for you offhand, but I couldn't tell you right offhand. I just did a report on all the rooftops, all the roofs in the district. There's hundreds of them.
Yeah.
I can review that to make sure
Okay.
it would make sense that we weren't replacing something there, but
Right.
Director Barnes.
Josh, you've talked in the past about some of the challenges with geothermal throughout the district and buildings. Was this one of the buildings that you'd anticipated the difficult?
I don't believe so. This one's been pretty good. It's more so this Aeon style unit. I don't want to go into like manufacturing things, but we've had a number of issues with this one and these throughout the district and other buildings too. So they're just a common, I don't want to call it air handling unit that we have issues with throughout the district. So we're trying to replace them where we can.
I guess to that, you mentioned old. What is the age of these units? I mean, what is the useful life? And
These are around 25 years old.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions or more information board members would need before this comes to us at the next regular meeting as an action item? Director Poston.
Also here in the quote, it talks about miscellaneous mechanical services not included, and it talks about roof and wall penetration, fire alarm system, and smoke detectors. So what is that about?
So when they put the units on the roof, oftentimes they have to cover a section where the unit sits with the roofing material. So if it doesn't fall exactly in the same footprint of something else, I need to call a roofer in to come in and patch that section in. Is really what that's about.
What about fire alarm and smoke detectors? What does that have to do with it?
So I think in this case this is trained, so they put this in here often. But in a lot of ductwork, there's detectors that detect smoke or heat. So they would alarm and shut the system down. So if there was something that would go wrong while they're doing the project, we would contact our local fire control rep. It's a little bit out of their realm of work, but it does link together.
Any other discussion or information? I think everybody asked all my questions. Do you know what is the normal life cycle of units like this?
It is probably right around 25 years.
Okay, so I'm assuming that you've looked into the other units in the district and we might need to get on a cycle of doing this so we're not doing a whole bunch at once.
I totally agree with you. At one point down the road or in the past, they did a whole bunch at one time. And it's kind of put us in a funny spot as far as doing it like this. So we're trying to get more of a schedule, kind of similar to our roofs too. Like it feels like we're doing something on a schedule so it doesn't all come forward at once.
I do agree with the rationale on the roof. If you're going to have a crane there setting these things, it would be a heck of a lot easier moving all that material up there too and getting it done instead of paying that crane to come back out, lift it off, and do the roof. So
I did look. They range anywhere from around 15 years old to 20 years old. So they have at least 5 or 10 years of useful life on them yet. So I think it would be a little early to take them off, but.
All right. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will move on to administrative reports.
We have one tonight. Dr. Barney's going to give us a presentation on some work that has been occurring in our district, and Vice President Kleindrom has been able to attend many of these meetings that we're getting ready to discuss. One of the things we're looking at investigating is our potential ways to adjust our high school schedule and the benefits that might be there for our students. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Barney. Thanks for putting this together, Dr. Barney.
Good evening. Bear with me while I get this pulled up here. Diane did not. Okay. Oh.
We'll take a quick 5-minute break while you look that up.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right, we're back.
All right, I will get us rolling here. So, as many of you will know from the Friday updates that we've kind of been sending along the way to kind of keep you abreast of the work. And as noted, Director Klein Jerome has sat in on some of these meetings to kind of hear the conversations. We've been doing some high school schedules throughout. I've been in the district now for 3 years, and over those 3 years, there's been a number of informal conversations that have popped up, not just with me, with multiple members of district leadership and building leadership. Even came up in conversations with our national consultant who had come in and gone into some buildings, and some dialogue has been centered around the impact that the schedule potentially may be having on our ability to address the needs of our students. And so some of the conversations that have come up with have centered around decreases in graduation rate, attendance rate, AP scores, achievement, those post secondary opportunities, our passing rates of our classes, and are there some avenues that we can be considering to strengthen the level of impact? What we do know is that our student success is not just solely based on the schedule that we offer our students, but the schedule is the vehicle in which we deliver our instructional pieces. And so we knew that we had to kind of take a look at that as teachers were asking questions, parents, students, counselors, administrators, lots of dialogue around our schedule. The beautiful part about this conversation is a few years back, when the schedule came up, it centered primarily on a conversation about finances. And I think we all would agree that entering into conversations about it, what's educationally best for our kids, centered around finances is probably not the best way to address that we should be center our conversations on what's in the best interest of our kids educationally, and then have dialogue around what are the implications financially. And so as Kevin says, I quoted him earlier as well, we can do anything, we just can't do everything. And so we're entering into one of those conversations where educational best practice has been our dialogue. And so we put together an advisory team, and that advisory team was represented by students, teachers, parents, district leadership, as well as those folks supporting the curriculum pieces of our work, to be going a little bit further into this discussion and to make it an official dialogue. During that conversation, as the group came together, we wanted to emphasize these bullet points that are in front of you, so I'll give you a moment to take a look at those. Ultimately, we wanted the work to center on increasing the opportunity for quality instructional time, and paying attention to some equitable opportunities to overall impact our graduation rates, as well as those post-secondary opportunities. So the timeline of this work took place with, as I said, over the last 3 years, there was discussions. The infrastructure of that task force was worked on, and then we moved into putting together an advisory team of all those great and wonderful people that were on the front side. I do want to share, we discovered when we held 4 meetings over a window of time, it becomes easy to miss some of those meetings, and so we were intentional to take any information that we had covered in the meeting and got it to folks electronically, and then still were able to get feedback from them. So even though they may have missed a meeting, they still had an opportunity to provide us the feedback along the way. So then our next step, as I shared previously, was how then do we take this to the folks that are closest to the work? In April, we went to each of the 4 high schools and provided the community forums with the teachers, where we allowed them to see this journey, very similar to the presentation. Took a little bit more time with them than what I'm going to take with you guys this evening, but so they had an opportunity to see the work, where it started, where it ended up at, and kind of the next steps. And then we provided them with an opportunity to give us some feedback as well. So every teacher who was present on the professional development day that we went to each of the buildings was able to do that. And then the next stage is we're going to now take these community forums out to the buildings. We just completed the first one at Central this evening. That's why I was running late tonight. And I had a handful of parents that showed up to that one. We're then going to go to the remaining 3 high schools as well for the community forum. And then we added in an extra meeting at the Lincoln Center as well to kind of tap into a location that there may be a segment of our community that is less likely to come into our building, so to be able to access them. We also shared this information with the NAACP and requested they also assist us in communicating this out, working with Sarah as well to communicate these community forums out. So we're really trying to reach out to folks, and hopefully this serves as another opportunity for people to hear the conversation and attend, and I'll show the dates here in a little bit. From there, we will take the feedback from these community forums, also doing a opportunity for students in each of the high schools to give us feedback as well, but we'll take that information in collaboration with our building leadership, district leadership, and our national consultant to then move forward with a recommendation as to how we will want to impact the schedule and the course guide for the 25-26 school year. So we'll have a year of finishing up through the spring here with this information, in the summer, a school year, a summer, and then implementation. Based on that, we'll be scheduling for the 25-26 school year. So the purpose is to share of these community forums, is to share the timeline so far, review the scheduling possibilities that the advisory team went through and narrowed down, and then to gather feedback. So if you want to take a quick look here at the priorities that we identified, these are tied into our Growing Excellence Plan. So all this work that originated from the board's work, from the board's guidance to our Growing Excellence Plans that our buildings are working on, tied back into this work as well. And so the principles that go into a high school schedule, there is not a recommendation by any of the national leaders on what you should choose as a schedule, because if there was one, then we'd all choose it. It would make this process a whole lot easier. But there is some guidance on what they say are best practices associated with them. And so I'll give you a moment to take a peek at those. The big ones that we really wanted to emphasize here is the importance of student voice and choice. As we know that the more that students are able to use their voice and their choice and to have that student agency, the more likely they are to engage. We know that engagement is an issue, as noted in our attendance rates and all those other pieces. So really trying to find ways to make sure that we're able to draw kids into instructions. And again, I want to point out, we know that the schedule is not the only thing that impacts student success, but again, it is our significant vehicle that we use to get us to where we're trying to. Want to note each of those pieces are things that we consider as we went through. And so making a schedule that drives achievement, engagement, equity, and efficiency, being clear about what to schedule within our schedule is one of the big pieces. So you look at these pieces here. These are the elements that we really wanted to focus in on. What are our course offerings? What's the impact on our staffing and our ability to deliver it? Impact on equity, strategies and priorities, and then how do we chunk our blocks of time that we have control during our instructional day. So as we looked at each of the schedules, our members of our task force then went through and rated each schedule that we looked at based on the impact that it would have on student equity, post-secondary readiness, instructional day on our teachers, instructional day on our students, the flexibility that it provided for kids to have those access to those opportunities, and what were the potential impacts on the overall operational systems. So if you notice here, the 8 schedules that we looked at were the 4x4 block, which we currently utilize, a conventional block or a traditional, not conventional block, a traditional schedule or conventional schedule, which would be just that standard 8-period day that runs for a semester on each side. An AB block schedule, which is a variation on our current block schedule, a rotating drop schedule, a trimester schedule, a modified block schedule, 2-3, and then a modified schedule, block schedule 4x1, and then a flex mod schedule. Each of those, if you just Google them, you can kind of get a better understanding of them. But the 4 with the arrows were the 4 that came out as the heaviest rated or heaviest valued schedules of those 8 schedules. So the guiding questions that we're asking folks in these community forums are these 3 questions. What are your thoughts regarding the schedule options? What components of a schedule are most important to you? And what else should be considered, or what other concerns do you have? And this Google link is, if it is not already posted on the website, I believe this presentation already is, so the Google link, I believe, is already up there. And then the QR code is ways that people can give us some feedback. So want to reemphasize the focus areas are how do we address the decreasing issues happening in our district around graduation rate, attendance, AP scores, achievement data, our pass rates, and our opportunities for post-secondary readiness. So what we did is we reviewed, we're going to review with our community, in our community forums, the current schedule so people have a grasp of it. We identified the strengths, and these were identified through this task force. We identified some basic ones, and we added to it from the task force members, and they identified the current strengths of our current schedule, and then they identified some of the limitations. I'm sure if folks could add into some of them, so some of those strengths are noted there. We primarily talk about the 3 bolded ones and the strengths, and the 3 bolded limitations there. Then we move into the 3 schedules that were chosen. In addition to those, these, for clarification, were in no ranked order. We have a ranking of which one was the number 1, but we felt like the block current schedule was in our top 4, and these other 3 were also identified as our top. So the AB block, you'll see there the description of it. Basically, it's running an A day with the 4 classes, similar to what we currently do, and then on a B day, so on Monday they'd run one schedule, on Tuesday they'd run another, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then continue that rotation, and that would be the difference. So they would have access to 4 different schedules, 4 additional classes. This is an example of a 9th grader's schedule. And then these are some of those themes that were discussed there. The flex mod, and I realize that as I go through this quickly for the benefit of the board, you guys are encouraged to join in on some of the community forums that are happening in each of the buildings or locations, and you have an opportunity to provide feedback, but we just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to kind of see the work that's taking place. The flex mod is modular scheduling in the form of academic year scheduling, which is a school days broken down into modules or mods that can be arranged in increments. As we go through, you'll see it's more on a semester instead of the quarters like we currently are. So the courses are held over the semester's length. Here's an example of a flex mod schedule. You'll notice on the schedule as you go through, you'll see that English goes through the whole year there. You'll see there's room for an RTI period. You'll see Earth and Space Science will only be held during that second block as a FAT class, but it's not offered in the spring, so they would take Earth and Space Science, be done with it in the first semester, and then they would take PE and Health in that same window of time in the second semester. Elective, and then Algebra as a skinny all year long, Spanish as a skinny all year long, and so on. Another example of this, and this is definitely going to look a little different. It might look very similar to a college schedule, but you'll notice some different components that could go into place and options that are available. And then the flex schedule, the C, now you really get to see the flexibility that can happen. An implementation of this currently would be very similar to what we have in our middle school right now, where we have some skinnies and some fats. The fats are our math and our ELA, and our skinnies are our other courses throughout the day, and that's a variation of this. That is a more controlled variation of this schedule, but like I said, the opportunities are infinite with this particular schedule. And this is what it would look like potentially for a teacher's schedule as well. The themes from the discussion in regards to the strengths and limitations. The Flex Mod provides for more cross-curricular opportunities. The content drives the amount of time that's associated with it. So if we determine a shop class, for example, needs more time because of setup and teardown in a given instructional window, we can account for that. We can account for some additional opportunities for some remediation and some advance as well. Our large group students receive grade level instruction, and then additional mods are based on the need. Obviously, limitations are that it's confusing. There's a fairly significant logistical lift in order to implement that, and we have to make sure we have the right staffing in place to accommodate. And then the last one that we looked at, that was one of our higher ranking ones, is the trimester schedule. The trimester system divides the academic year into 3 seasons or sessions: fall, winter, and spring. Each trimester is approximately 12 to 13 weeks long. Each trimester you can take 4 to 7 classes depending on the structure. You see how it's broken down there potentially on a calendar. Trimester schedule, we've got 3 examples here. This one's based on a 4-period, similar to what we have except in the block schedule, except we're broken down into a fall, winter, and spring. Obviously, the number of periods a day then impacts the length of each period of the day. So on the 4, that's how it's broken down. In a 6-period, you can break it down by 5 if you'd like to know what that looks like. In a 6-period day, these are broken down into hour increments, and you see how it's broken down as you go through. Again, allowing kids to have certain courses all year long and allowing them to have certain courses for each trimester in length. And there's a 7-period, which is a little smaller, and all the pieces that can go into that. The discussions that emerged for strengths and limitations, the 3 bolded ones here, shorter class periods over more days. First try ends prior to winter break, no finals following a winter break. So they're not going on a break for 2 weeks and then returning back and having to take finals. And allows for earlier intervention and credit recovery for students needing additional support, more space in a day, and schedule over 4 years. The common planning times and the planning pieces are in there and able to manage limitations. Transcripts with trimesters to input credits is challenging. There's definitely a learning curve there. Our folks see it as they come in from other school districts with a trimester as they try to do that. Transfer students to or from other districts may receive partial credits, and so we have to manage that. And potential for increased teacher preps. We have to make sure we have careful consideration on limiting the number of preps that a teacher has within that schedule, and we'd have to do that with the other schedules as well, but those are some potential limitations. And then once again, here's the feedback that we're requesting from people. Want to emphasize, what are your thoughts regarding the schedule options? What components of a schedule are most important to you? And what else should be considered? What other concerns do you have? So the next pieces, what we're doing here tonight as part of the community forum, those are the 4 dates up there within the schools and the Lincoln Center, and then the student video that's going to be put together to also gain student feedback as well from all of our students in the high school. And we haven't talked about it, but potentially middle school as those kids will be coming up in. And that is it. So what our encouragement is, because I know that something like this can light up a whole lot of questions and go bing, 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 and we'd be here for the next 4 hours. So we do encourage you to attend the community forums. Also, if there's specific questions that we could get back to you as a part of this process, sharing those with Superintendent Steckloff, and then we can kind of go from there. So I'll let you guys guide what's next for me.
Thank you for the presentation. We're not going to do any discussion on this because this wasn't actually posted on the agenda. So no one from the community or no one had any chance to give any feedback, and I don't want to violate anything. Because now they fine you for a job that you don't get paid for.
Yep.
So
And so the opportunity for the feedback is at the community forum. So we'd love to encourage folks to attend and join us there at those. And hopefully we can support questions as they emerge from that work. Thank you guys very much.
thank you for the very lengthy administrative report. We go from none to pow. All right. I'm assuming there's no other administrative reports. All right. Are there any board requests? All right. Seeing none, we'll go on to board reflections. We'll start with Director Barnes.
Just one quick, appreciate the administration and Bray's work on the creative solution relative to merging brands. I think that the discussion we had at previous meeting has resulted in a much better outcome than where we were with the initial discussion. So great, thanks there.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Director Klein Jerome.
I agree that was took our feedback and came up with a plan that merges things. I sat in on the conversations for the high school schedule, so I did like the fact that it never was about money when they looked at this, what's best for students and their learning.
Thank you, Director Klein Jerome. Director Beck.
I am happy to see that we are discussing scheduling. That's something I got questions about as soon as I started on the board, and I've had questions about as well. But I also really appreciate the update on SMART and Sudlow and the idea of sort of using the environment to sort of as part of that transition to high school.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Poston.
Yeah, just along the same lines, I'm just excited about the progress that's being made on both the SMART and Sudlow projects, and look forward to a completion date.
Thank you, Director Poston. Director Hayes.
I appreciate everything that's been said thus far, but I am glad that the color things have been taken into consideration for SMART, as well as the scheduling. I enjoyed that conversation as well.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Superintendent Schneckbaum.
I'm very proud of the process that our administration is using to gain feedback. It's a replication of how we conducted our long-range facility process, and it's really providing a good amount of equity and voice, and I'm proud of that process.
Thank you, Superintendent. Since no one else did it, I'm going to plug our awesome students that performed last weekend. They did a great, amazing job. And Davenport Schools is the best of the best. And with that, Director Potts isn't here, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All right. Motion's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.